What's good, y'all? Today I'm in a storage unit. It is raining outside, so I'm kind of forced to work in a tiny little garage. I still miss my unit in Oklahoma. This one doesn't have a light and it's 5 feet shorter, so really don't have that much room to work, but I can still get work done here. Kinda, sorta. I got a hater that works here. But anyways, on to business. Today, we are taking care of this fuel pump. This is my old setup. You can see how ghetto it is and how very last minute it was put together. And this has always weighed heavy on my mind from day one, how I set this up. But when I made this, I was in a crazy time crunch and I felt I had to rush it. So it is what it is. Today we're taking care of it. The biggest issue with this setup isn't the terrible return line, but it's the way the pump is in the assembly. It traps the fuel pump, bro, and there's really no way of getting a taller one in there without doing a ton of drilling. Not only that, but you have to take your bent and rusty screwdriver to, you know, sit here and go under the tabs, lift the tabs up and potentially break the plastic in order to get the assembly apart. This pump assembly heavily relies on this little O-ring around the outlet on the fuel pump, right? Now to get this fuel pump to fit, since it's taller than the factory fuel pump, there's drilling that you have to do. And the drilling that I did, man, this is ghetto. This is why it keeps splitting. But like, that's the only way to get the pump to fit. There's an assembly that I have that uses hose clamps and a hose instead of an O-ring fitting inside a tube. Also, what was I thinking, bro? Oh my God. See, this is all about learning. Look at this return line. Bro, because a lock washer is gonna, and it's low key digging into the plastic. See, I was tripping with this setup. You can tell it was extremely last minute. I had like a week to pull this off and I went in blind and that was the result. But that's okay because you live and you learn. So here's the new pump. You can see the difference in the supply and how it's mounted. Here's the new fitting. Actually having it sealed the proper way just brings a little bit more peace of mind. Same thing goes for the submersible fuel line that I have. I have about a foot of it because I'm pretty sure that's all I need. And I plan on throwing it right there in that open space. Just drill a hole right there. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started on disassembling this. The first thing I need to do is remove the filter, this black piece, and then the fuel pressure regulator. And I need to go block off the return port that the regulator is going into. All right, I did a little bit more than just the filter and the regulator. I got everything completely disassembled, kind of laid out. I just used the same method that I used on my old assembly for blocking off the return port. This bolt specifically, I know for sure is out of the interior somewhere, but I don't know what it secures. By the looks of it, it's probably one of the seat bracket bolts. I'd say like a 1/2 inch by 3/4 bolt should do the trick. You can kind of see there, but I wrapped a ton of gas-rated thread tape all around that bolt. I wrapped it enough to be bigger than the diameter of the hole, and I forced it in so it's pretty much stuck in there. It's essentially a plug. So now I'm gonna mimic my old setup with this hose clamp, you know, cut it up and screw it into the assembly and use it as a fail-safe, just in case, you know, for any reason this bolt decides to loosen up. I doubt it'll ever be an issue, but I like to have peace of mind, so I'm gonna go ahead and install some insurance. And that there is what we like to call insurance. So I'm glad I brought my file, because I had a feeling after test fitting this sock that I would need to file this down just a little bit. So I'm gonna file it down, make some clearance, and test fit everything. I already have part of the submersible fuel hose cut to length on the pump. And here we are like 3 minutes later, barely filed it down at all, and I got a nice fit. All right, got the return port drilled. I'd say that's a pretty clean cut. And it's honestly as simple as that. That is a little close to the supply, but I test fitted an AN fitting on it and it clears it. Definitely a much more professional look, but with that, I'm honestly done. All I gotta do is put the leveler back on But yeah, it's honestly simple as that. You just block the return port, add in your own with the AN fitting, and you know, you got a return style setup ready to go on your fuel pump assembly if you have this assembly. I had to do so much drilling and cutting and a bunch of stupid stuff to the other assembly, which is arguably why the O-ring kept splitting. But this one is so incredibly straightforward. All right, I'm back at the storage unit, and I'll go ahead and be the one to say that I recorded the storage unit part of this video all in one day. The part you just saw about the new pump assembly, I recorded yesterday because I was trying to get started on it, and I'm not trying to sit here and leave Mr. Fuel Pump out of the car for longer than it has to be, because I'm really not the biggest fan of fumes, you know, just lingering inside my car. I feel like I'm gonna go to sleep, wake up the next morning, turn on the news, and there's gonna be a fire at the damn storage unit because my car fucking exploded while I was sleeping, so no thanks. And I'm gonna transfer a couple things over to the new assembly, the wiring harness, the pump. I'm gonna take off the sock. I don't know if I mentioned, but I bought a couple more socks. That way I can kind of stock them. Before I do that though, I am gonna test and see if the float works. So I'm just gonna plug the assembly in without the wiring harness going to the pump and mess around with the float and see if I can get the same reading on the dash. All right, everything's assembled. New socks on, old pumps in. I did use a hose clamp just for easier access. It's pretty tight fit in there, but it all looks pretty good to me. I think she's ready to go in. So I got the pump in, but before I test it, I'm going to install this check valve after the fuel pressure regulator. The system does not hold fuel pressure after you turn the car off at all. And I did some research, and apparently the 255s have built-in check valves. So really the only other thing that could be causing the rapid fuel pressure loss is the fuel pressure regulator. I figured in theory it wouldn't drop fuel into the return line unless it was over the set, you know, pressure. I'm just gonna install a check valve after it so I can at least get fuel pressure to the rails. That way I'm not sitting here having to prime the fuel pump, you know, 3 or 4 times, and it's supposed to be warmed up. You know, I wanna be able to start the car after I just turned it off, you know what I'm saying? Like, I hate having to sit there on the starter, even at cold starts, man, because the tune activates the fuel pump, you know, just to prime the system, and then it'll shut the pump off, you know, expecting the system to hold pressure, but it's not doing that. So I'm sitting here having to play with the key and prime it a whole bunch and then sit on the starter for like, you know, 10 seconds before I can get it to turn over. So hopefully this check valve will solve all that. I went and tested it, and you can see that car is not on, fuel pump is not running, and it's holding pressure. Not even dropping. Yes, sir. So I did find one issue with this check valve setup, and that is the fuel pressure rising after shutoff, right? It's supposed to sit around 40, but it climbs. And I tested it earlier and sat in the car for like 5 minutes, and it got all the way up to 60. And I'll tell you exactly what's going on. First thing I'm gonna do though, unplug the pump, turn the car on, get this fuel pressure drop. This line here, since it's holding pressure, after shut off, the fuel's got nowhere to go and there's a lot of heat soak. And so everything's trying to expand and it's got nowhere to go since it's not going in the return. So I know I said that I don't think there's a return, or rather there's a check valve in the fuel pressure regulator, but I just don't agree, man. I'm gonna test everything out because in theory, there should be nothing in the return line unless it's above the set, you know, pressure. So I'm gonna experiment here with some setups, and I'm gonna put the check valve before the regulator, and I'm gonna see if that solves my issue. This is totally not the situation I want to be in right now, but we're gonna make it work.
It's raining sideways!
So I got lucky and there's a little bit of a break in the rain and I managed to get the lines on. Go ahead and pop the hood real quick while it's not pissing rain. But I knew I was right, bro. There was no way that fuel pressure regulator wouldn't hold pressure after key off. So I know that the check valve issue is with the pump. So it might not be a genuine wall, bro. Don't know, don't care, got everything handled. Because check it out. I mean, it's holding pressure. So either there's no check valve in the wall, bro, or it's not a genuine wall, bro. Don't care. I'm gonna swap it out with a different fuel pump later. But all that matters now is we're good. It would have been no big issue if, you know, the check valve didn't work and just, you know, both the fuel pressure regulator and the pump, you know, wouldn't hold pressure after key off. You know, I would have just rolled with it like normal, but it is definitely going to be nice to not have to prime the pump 1,000 fucking times in order to get a cold start. So I'm gonna go and put my seatbelt on and get some gas. And I'm gonna enjoy, hopefully enjoy the rest of my day. So if I don't have any other updates in like the next 2 days, then I guess I'll catch y'all later, and I appreciate y'all checking in.